Hello, everyone. We are on hour nine of my 24 in 24 for Sam's challenge, where every hour on the hour for 24 hours. Today, on the 24th of July, so 24/7. For the those of us in the UK that follow the date format, is trying to raise visibility for Samaritans, which is an organization that I volunteer for, to say that we are here 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Um, we don't take holidays because you know what? Sometimes it is the holidays that are the toughest for a lot of people for many reasons, who are missing loved ones, and so we're on all the time to support our callers who are going through any tough times, especially if they're feeling suicidal. So I'm doing this to to normalize conversations that matter, and also to raise funds, and to create a space to talk about important things. So this session we have Richard Clark, who I've worked with before. And Richard, you said that this particular topic is something close to your heart, and it's not something that's been picked up by any of the other conferences before. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so I had a bit of a mental breakdown about 3 years ago, pre-COVID, post-COVID. I can't even remember now. It's kind of irrelevant. COVID was not part of it. And one of the things in dealing with that I recognised was it hadn't happened then. It had actually happened like 15 years before, and it allowed me to recognise the sources and how I'd been dealing or hiding those things, and how my own self-harm thoughts actually been there a really long time, to the point where I was doing things that were at risk but never quite going to that final step. And I associated a lot of that with the lifestyle of being a consultant, and I wanted to share with people in ways of dealing with that, and also my own personal journey using cognitive behavior therapy, how it helped me recognize those signs, because no one's ever really cured from mental health, but you learn how to cope with your particular issues and things in better ways if you can recognize things. So I'm no expert, and I want, if anyone is interested in CBT, please go and get and see someone, see a counsellor, or get help from your doctor. Don't come to me because I'm not an expert. I've just got my experience. Or call Samaritans.
Ah, yes. Samaritans, we are a listening service, and I think for many people it helps to talk about things. But when you talk about CBT, that is additional, more expert, more professional help that could be a lot more targeted. You said that it started like 15 years before that. Can you just talk about that? What makes you say, you know, just so that the audience can be more aware of things? So just tell us a little bit more about why you said it started 15 years
Yeah, I
ago.
think when I was a young professional, still in my early 30s, as like all consultants, a lot of the work then was on customer site. So working for a system integrator, not Salesforce related, I would travel around the country and I would live out hotels with a suitcase. Going home weekends was get all your washing done, go back, and the focus was
Yeah.
completely on your work. When you start having young children, that starts to cause guilt and other symptoms. The whole I missed that nativity play, or I didn't attend parents' evening, and that can actually build resentment in a personal relationship. So with my first wife, that built a lot of resentment, I feel. And then when things changed in my life, when my mother passed away, I didn't have a support network in place. And the other thing about consultant lifestyle that I think we need to talk about is you build a friendship group, and people that have been at a company 20 years, they kind of have this constant family, this company family around them. When you're a consultant, you have very brief engagements with people you like, you work well with, and then after 6 months, it's gone, or they've gone, or something else. So you have these constantly building friendships and then them being torn down. 15 years ago, I think, well, okay, we had Facebook more than, well, 20 years ago. But even beyond that, you kind of get used to that separation. You get used to working a certain way, and then you tear that all up. And it's really disruptive. And I think that was a point where I lost. touch with friends as a result of that, and friends as a man as well, terrible. We're terrible at keeping in touch, and it's something where I didn't really have a support network. I was isolated.
I see. So this is when you look back and you think that was the little things that built up to kind of like what happened.
Indeed, and that is the thing. When I think 12 years ago was the crunch point for me, where I separated from my first wife, and my friends were there, people we know at Make Positive, Troy, Ella, Will, etc. We don't know since David. They were there for me at that point when I needed them most. And I remember it was kind of a key moment. It was my birthday in 2013, and I was like on my own, living in a flat in East London. And they said, "Oh, we've seen the show tonight. Do you want to come along?" And that for me was oh, okay, I feel good. This is great. But what I didn't recognise was the lows and the self-loathing and everything else people wouldn't know about me because they think you're so confident, you're a great speaker. Those were still there, happening in the background, and that's the thing I was still dealing with for another almost 8-9 years.
Wow. Okay. You have some slides. Do you want to go through the slides, or do you? Because I've got like I would love to hear a bit more about what.
But let's put some up, but we'll come back in and out. I can't even remember what's in the deck now. I wrote it so long ago. So yeah, I think what culminated for me was I was in a role at a company where I was feeling isolated. I was feeling burnt out as that company grew after a Series A investment, an ISV. I was more and more marginalised, and yet I felt I'd done a really good job there. I felt I'd really been successful, but due to the expansion of the company, I sort of got lost in terms of the structure, the teams, and sidelined. And that, I was behaving badly. I was having tantrums. I had a lot of thoughts of self-harm as a result of that. My self-esteem massively suffered, confidence. And again, that feeling of isolation was like, who did I go to? Because actually my best friend at the time was my boss. So when that relationship falls down, you've got, well, who do I now go to? Because all my other friends I haven't talked to in 5, 6, 7 years, because I've been focused on this one. And people talk a lot about imposter syndrome. It's not a recognised diagnosis, and it's something that affects women more than men. But even the most successful people you meet in the community, we still all have imposter syndrome. We all feel there's always this really high bar, and we all feel like we're not quite as good enough as person X or person Y or person Z, which is it definitely doesn't help seeing people get their CTA, get their MVP, whatever, and you don't, or they get selected to talk and you don't. You still have this feeling of low self-worth when it just so happens someone else was picked. But it doesn't mean you're any less, but at the time that's how you feel. So that was kind of where I was at the time. And one of the techniques that helped me deal with this was something called a stress bucket. So by drawing a picture of a bucket and putting all the things in there, no matter how silly they are, so that you look back now and go, second property, what? Well, it's such a first world problem. You're worried about a second property. Well, but if you've got a bucket, that bucket can only fit so much stress in it for any one person. And if you're not putting holes in that, all the things that would normally bring me joy, like reading, baking, even ironing. I like ironing in front of the Netflix. So who knew? I like ironing shirts. Even gardening. When you're not doing these things, they add to your stress bucket. The things you enjoy are no longer giving you joy because you're not doing them, and that is flowing over. And the secret stress bucket is finding ways to put holes in that bucket. So for each one of those, for me, it was what could I do to mitigate this? And it doesn't solve it, it doesn't empty the bucket, but it stops it flowing over the top by having real tangible tasks. And it's project management is one of your expertise, but actually writing things down, doing those tasks one by one. And I had a whiteboard in my garage. I wrote everything up there. Silly things like polish on my shoes, or all these things that were constant in the background going, oh, you haven't done that, you haven't done that, haven't done this, haven't built this, haven't repaired that, haven't painted the whatever. I put those down on the list. And I took time off work. I left the company I was at, and I intended to take 3 months out. I took 6 months out in the end. But in that 3 months, I got help. So I realized I had problems. I had gut problems. I had a lot of bleeding. I was neglecting it. And I realized I was neglecting it because I almost saw that as my suicide path in a way. So thinking, well, if I leave it, I'm not doing anything that's actionable, in my view, I was doing things that were just putting me at risk, because I didn't have time to sort it out. But if I leave it, it's kind of almost like just that self-harm materializing by not doing these things. And you know about my knee problems. You know, I was leaving things like that as well. I was constantly in pain. I wasn't getting physiotherapy for it. I was just kind of, that was my self-harm, was letting things happen to me. But doing some things with stress bucket was a key part for me. Shall we stop on the slides there and sort of, I see there's some questions coming in.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat. Oh, yes, this is a really good one. How do you feel about the loss of friendships outside of work?
So I relied heavily on the community, as some people know, and I used to live in London. That was easy when I lived in London. So the community has really supported me and become for I think a lot of us in the Salesforce ecosystem, a real friendship network. And you see the same people, the same ones. COVID kind of changed that because it broke all that for a while, and then different people came back. But where I've been in projects, what I've tried to do is LinkedIn became my primary source instead of Facebook or Instagram, because and Twitter, they all became so polluted with things I wasn't interested in. LinkedIn became my go-to place where I felt I was part of that digital community and international community as well. So I've made peace with the fact I don't need to go out and have a beer with someone to be a friend with them. I can be a friend with someone through digital media, which as you're older, it isn't as natural. But luckily, being a guy, I can not talk to someone for 10 years and then pick up 10 years later, and there's no slight, no offense, and no one's worried about it as a guy. Not quite so easy for our female audience. Those friendships don't always last the test of time if you're not maintaining them. So I think that's helped me. The other thing I did is I worked at an ISV for 7 years. So I had that family when I worked at an ISV. The consulting lifestyle, I think the thing that was really detrimental and I've become a real critique of is agile, and the concept of you're going to work at this level for this many weeks, and when it's done you're going to work again at that level on something else. It's constant high pressure. And me and you remember the days of Waterfall. You had this time up front doing design, then you had the peak, the classic bell curve in the team size. So you had a more natural build-up project, and it then goes down into hypercare, other people starting on things. It was actually better for that. Where I've worked in ISVs and as a consultant, and you're doing project, you just don't get that downtime in the same way. At the same time, though, I think I've had some of the best social experiences at places like Make Positive Together. That was one of the culture there, the drinking culture and other parts of party culture was fantastic. And we still friends with those people. At larger companies we were both at slightly different times. That didn't exist. So you formed your own team. But it is different people have different ways of coping with it. I think at different ages. In my 50s, it's quite different how I cope with this when I was in my 30s.
I think as we age and mature, the way we make friends and the people that we connect with will also be different.
Indeed. And your interests, 1 minute you're talking about football and TV, and the next you're talking about what colour nappy your baby did last night, and then you move on to talking about grandchildren and how sharing photos of your grandchildren or your dog. So what we talk about changes, but the fact we have these human connections is something we need to maintain, and something certainly where I'm at Elements, it is a family. That number one value is not trust, it's family. Family comes first. And that's one of the reasons I joined them, and that's something I really feel every day working at somewhere like Elements.
I agree. I've got some questions, but I'm going to leave that to the last. So I'm just going to let you carry on first. I'm just noting them now.
Okay. So one of the other techniques my therapist taught me was called a cross-sectional. I really struggled to do these. And what she recommended was I keep doing this in my life. And I haven't done one in a while because I haven't felt like I needed to. But something as simple as when I was out of work, then trying to get back into work, the act of failing to get a job, or this could be failing to get a talk at Dreamforce or London's Calling or whatever it is, you really want to almost materialize on paper what it is you felt. So what was it you experienced as such? What were you thinking at the time? Without analyzing whether it's right or wrong, capturing that was a way of just putting it down and communicating it on paper. and then trying to say, well, why? What was I feeling? And as a guy, this is really hard. What was I feeling? And documenting that was really, really difficult. How was I behaving? So I was withdrawing. I cut myself off. I'd quit my job. I was alone at home, not talking to anyone except my wife and my local friends. So I was really, I was starting to think, oh, actually, well, maybe I can't be an architect anymore, so I'll apply for developer jobs. So I was really affecting myself in terms of what I was going for, chasing that job or whatever, the way I was behaving, and then really feeling what was my body feeling. Really hard to do this, but it's worth practicing about things. And there's no analysis of right or wrong, or it's just great to actually recognize. So that if you're feeling shaking, if you're having physical sensations, hyperventilating, actually being able to relate that back to what you're thinking at the time and how you're behaving can make you help understand it, rather than what's wrong with me? Am I going mad? Is there something wrong with me? And actually, the reality, this is something everyone does. This is what we all do. It is how we deal with it afterwards. Sorry, did you want to ask about that?
Yeah. So this is just, I guess, the analysis, just putting down what the current status is.
Yeah.
And then I guess, sorry, I'm wait. Yeah, go to your next slide. I'm really.
Well, I still do these now, so I still have the original piece of paper to hand, so I can go to them at any point and say, what was I doing and how was I behaving? And there's not one, there's several. Every time this happens, there's another one. And actually, paper for me was a way of doing it to not be on the computer. So this is obviously for a presentation. And then I think once we'd analysed it, what was really useful for me is understanding, am I normal? And there's 10 of these things in CBT, but I just picked out the top ones here. Is being able to score myself of what was I doing. And I actually went through this with my son as well. My son's been on a mental health journey for the last 12 years. Guilt was that caused by the separation from his mother? Yes. Possibly. Did it affect his university career? Yes. But he's come off medication now after 12 years, and he's sort of back to his old self, very much physically and mentally. But being able to talk to him about this and share it with him, and the first time I saw him writing things down in the book, and I said to him, are you writing down what you're thinking? And he was shocked. Why? And I said, well, do you ever feel like this? And the fact other people feel this way, and the fact these are things all humans do, was hugely beneficial, because it again makes you understand, I am normal. We all do these things. So, I did get it or I didn't get it. So if I didn't get it, I'm failed. If I didn't get that job, if I didn't get that call for paper, then I must be no good at this. Whereas it's well, they've got to pick 3 out of 3,000. So you did a good job, but it wasn't the one they were interested. Doesn't mean it's not good. Doesn't mean you should stop trying. And again, that overgeneralizing. Well, I never get selected. Well, I do. I got selected at London's Calling. I got selected at French Touch Dreaming last year. So being able to actually categorize these things and say, okay, how am I behaving? Am I filtering out the evidence to only look at the bad things? Can I look at the wider point, the good things? And I say there's I have a massive sheet of things on here. And we went through this with my therapist, saying, well, which of these do you think, and how much do you do these things? And that was also related to unhelpful thinking styles. So am I catastrophizing? Am I minimizing things? So am I saying the importance or discounting the importance of a good thing, like being married to my wife? I'm not appreciating. I'm fortunate to have that I've got a house, I've got a dog, I've got grandchildren. You tend to minimize those and only focus on the negatives, like debt or whatever it is that you're currently struggling with. But for all these things, there's usually a solution. So I could move to a smaller house and have a smaller mortgage. If the debt's worrying me, there is a solution to it. It doesn't have to stress me. I can act on that. It's I think it was who was the rugby coach? Clive Woodward. He was successful in getting the England rugby team to win the Rugby World Cup. Control the controllables. So For anything you can't control, just don't worry about it. You can't control that the opposition is 7 foot tall and 20 stone. What you can control is not getting hit by him. Okay, so control your controllables, and anything else, just let it go, because you cannot do anything about it. If someone writes something about you online, you could react to it. And I think we've both experienced some of this. I've certainly experienced on LinkedIn more recently. And I was like, okay, I did react and I shouldn't have done. Next time, don't react, because they've got their opinion, I've got mine. There's no point having an argument online about things. It's not going to do anyone any good.
Yeah. Agreed.
So this was more the lensing stuff. So again, mind reading. So trying to jump to conclusions, trying to predict the future, trying to say, well, if this happened, then this is true, and you need to not do that. We talked about catastrophizing, and then also critical words like should, must, ought can help us. I should be better at this. People think I'm smart. I need to be the smartest person in the room. No, I don't. I say this is the area that I know. I'm open to your opinions. We try and put ourselves, and when we don't know something, we put labels on ourselves and put labels on others. And what was really interesting when I went through therapy was my therapist said to me, would you expect this of people that work for you? And I went, no, they're all on a journey. I said, well, why do you expect it of yourself? Why do you hold yourself to a higher level than the people you work with or people that work for you? And that was a real moment that rocked me. And I think that was a really surprising. Well, oh, okay, good point. And that's something always I think it's worth dealing with. Say, well, and if you are dealing with everyone else the same way as you're dealing with yourself, you do need to be careful and think, am I being negative towards the people I'm with? Am I expecting too much of people? Because this can apply to yourself. It could apply to how your management style as well, equally.
Why do you think you are kinder to those around you than yourself?
I think I changed probably after I was a father. I think that nurturing aspect, and I other people can do things that I can't now, and I need them in a way. So, and I also I actually personally enjoy seeing other people progress rather than see them as a threat. Not everyone sees that. And although in my career there were people I nurtured who then, I may say, stabbed me in the back, was one way of viewing it, a negative way of viewing it. The majority of people did not do that. They appreciated support, and I felt good. It put a hole in my stress bucket from seeing someone else succeed to seeing someone else get certification who I helped, whether it's admin, whatever it is, to seeing people do their first talk at a community event who I've coached. Those things give huge, almost more adrenaline than if I did it. But I don't know if anyone, how do you feel about that? Because you've been obviously coaching people now for many years.
I, like you, I guess I like your poke the hole in the stress bucket thing. I think lots of people do good because it makes them feel good. And I think in the grand scheme of things, it's one of those things that is, you're doing good and you feel good, and so it's okay kind of situation. And that will outweigh where you do something good for somebody and they, I mean, the least is, don't acknowledge, and worse this, they actively harm you with the, come and bite you in the butt kind of situations, and just look at it like, there will be people like that. They're not that many, and I should just focus on the good and impact that I do in other places for other people.
Yeah. And I still have that perfectionism. I'll never be rid of that need to feel it needs to be perfect, but I'm much better at doing things when they're 80% now. And I need to be careful when I use AI tools now, because I'm very easy to say, oh, well, that's done. That's now 80%. But that need to go check it is kind of almost going back into that world where I'm like, I'm avoiding doing something, but I still feel responsible for that output and things. I found myself doing some blogs recently, and there's a blog I've been writing now for a month. The first ones came like on a Sunday morning, bang, 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 and I put them on Medium because I love writing. I always wanted to write a book. but I wanted to write a science fiction, a fantasy book, something like that, not a book on technology or something, because I just find that's like doubling down on my workload.
Mm.
And actually, most of my network, I didn't want people to come and critique it. Whereas if it was a book, it was something, it was my story I was telling, that was something fiction was more appropriate. But and now I've forgotten my point, and I'm the one that's only been up an hour.
There's it is quite interesting. I see a question that popped up on LinkedIn that didn't come through on Restream, and it's from Beach, and he asked, "Have you found any creative or emotionally expressive outlets away from the screen, or not felt the need?"
Oh, I definitely have the need. I mean, for me, it was baking. If you remember when I was at Make Positive, and there were a lot of bakers there, which was good, but it wasn't competitive. There were some people better at decorating. I always went for taste. So for me, baking has been my go-to. But I must admit, last couple of years, no, I mean, I did gaming for a while, but I'm like, here you are in front of a screen.
Mm.
I talked to her about my knee problems. My knee problems are caused from sitting at a desk for 35 years, 40 years probably, from being a teenager doing it as well. Sitting at a desk is really, really bad for your knees. Who would have thought? You think standing all day. Well, actually, both. So sitting at a desk and then doing 4 days walking around San Francisco once a year or twice a year is really, really bad for your knees. So sitting down doing the same thing again, I wouldn't recommend. But gaming did help me back, a few years ago, and I did actually, previous to us recarpeting the house, I have all my gaming gear out in here, linked up to my stereo and things. But I did it not for me; I did it for my grandson. So I had the steering wheel out and everything, so he could play with that. And I will do it again at some point. But definitely, I would recommend people find something that, as Beach said, is not the same as your job. I can't garden easily. I can't bend down and do things. I like growing vegetables and then cutting them out and just eating them straight from the garden and stuff like that. That gives me joy. I used to enjoy going on walks and things. I'm not able to do that. I used to drive a lot. I don't drive as much now because driving was one of my risk areas when I was having self-harm thoughts. So I would drive to a point beyond my ability deliberately. So I tend not to do that anymore because that takes me back to that dark place. But for other people, maybe it's a track day, go-karting, whatever it is, whether it's cooking, baking, gardening, ironing sometimes, whatever it is. But I do recommend and agree with them, making it something that you don't do in your day job, making it different enough, not looking at a screen, because that isn't good for your eyesight and it's not good for your rest of your body.
Mm.
Under the desk treadmill, yes. I have a desk cycle, and I'm supposed to be using it for my physio because I had a knee replacement, and I'm still putting that off. I'm still procrastinating about it. So thank you for mentioning it. That's definitely something I should be doing more often. I should be doing right now while we're talking. So
Should be. What else you got?
I'm not sure what else is in here. Okay, so turning things round. So once you've been through that analysis, it's actually trying. And I found this really difficult because I had all these negative thoughts. But I won't share one of my real ones because I'm too embarrassed, too shy. I think it's too personal sometimes to share some things. So, but being able to actually write down how your belief has changed from doing that analysis, what the real situation is, and finding evidence for it was quite interesting and incredibly hard. But the act of doing that was helpful because it took me away from the filtering and lensing. It took me towards the appreciating the other things in my life, like my family, animals and friends that I'd neglected. So I think that was the last one I had in there. That was the last slide we had. Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong screen. No. Oh, I did include one. Okay. I could no longer do development. I could do it with enough time. And this is pre-AI development tools. So again, I've actually avoided using any of the AI development tools at the moment because I do not want to go back and be a developer again. I've deliberately not done it. I think I could. But actually being able to do that, and I should write one out for this now, is actually then saying, well, actually, what is consistent with my old belief that I can't do something and is consistent with I could do it. I just don't. I've done all the exams. other people believe me and I help other people with their, I've already succeeded where other smart people have failed. I already have a job offer maybe as a developer again, and people keep asking me to do analyst briefings and different things. So I can do these things. Other people believe in me, so why am I not believing in it myself?
Mm.
That was, I think, the last example we had in there. And then really, yeah, there is a number of things you can do. I think it'd be interesting to talk about why I didn't call Samaritans. Why didn't I not reach out to something like that was anonymous? So I'm interested to know why I didn't do that, because I don't know the answer. I didn't go to my GP, but I went to my private medical provider because it was easy. It was online. I'm comfortable doing that. And I was referred to someone on my healthcare plan. And that was a local psychologist. And we could have done it. It was still just post-COVID. So I think I could have done it all virtual. I chose to do some in person and some virtual. And for me, that was good to see a real person because I was able to be more natural with that person, and they were probably able to observe my body language and other things much easier. And they did recommend things like mindfulness apps, whether that's on your home personal assistant speaker or on your mobile phone, things like Calm, Headspace. These things can help. I didn't use them much, but I mean, those are things that people could use to try and get things. But if anyone's recognized any of the things in here, and especially that filtering lensing stuff, if this is something people are saying, yeah, I do that, doesn't mean you need to seek help, but think about it. Maybe look up and maybe Google what cognitive behavior therapy is, or speak to someone about what it is that you're struggling with. If you don't want to speak to someone, at least write it down. Analyze, do the thing, do your stress bucket, do your cross sectionals, try and do these things. These are all available online, psychology tools, various things online to get these. But drawing your stress bucket and then working out what could I do. If it's one thing that puts a hole in your butt, that's enough. You don't have to do them all. And for me, not overcommitting has been something I still have to tackle each time.
Oh, thank you for that. Is that the end of your slide?
I don't think there's anything else we need to go. And yeah, that's the end.
I have a question because you mentioned this a couple of times. You said self-harm thoughts, and usually it's it's young girls who have those thoughts. Can you, like, when did you notice it starting? I mean, when was the first time you've had these thoughts?
I think I can remember. I can't remember how long ago. It was probably over 25 years ago when I first thought I could just walk into the sea right now. So my self-harm thoughts weren't the sort of physical hurt myself. It was thinking about suicide, but I was never at the point where I was prepared to do it. And what always held me back was, fortunately, the guilt, the impact on others, what people think if I did that. What would the embarrassment be to my wife or my children from doing that, rather than the love for them, unfortunately. But I was fortunate that those same negative thoughts held me back from going beyond, standing on the edge of the cliff and looking down, and never being at the point where I was ready to jump off. But I remember, in my 20s, dealing with things like drinking a whole bottle of whiskey. Learned my lesson then. I've barely touched whiskey since.
Was that before all the consulting stuff that you were talking about, or?
Yeah, that was actually a software house at the time, but I had a relationship breakdown. So I guess it's always some people that you naturally have a tendency towards that when something bad happens and learning how to deal with it. And I was so young, in my 20s, and again living alone up in Colchester at the time. So I think those things happen regardless of the consulting. I think the consulting thing impact was that I didn't have anyone to go to. And actually the company I was at back then, there was 13 of us there, and there was definitely no one there I would talk about it. But I guess I was also isolated from my university friends who I'd see 4 or 5 times a year back then. But as we've grown up, all had families, those friendship groups have broken down. But you know what? If I saw one of those people again, one of my friends from university, my old wargaming or Dungeons and Dragons group, we would just carry on where we were, and we'd talk about the old times we had together, and none of it was real. It was all fiction, but we'd talk about that stuff. And I know that's there if I ever needed it, but they are not people I feel I could open up to and talk about my marriage or talk about my children or talk about my personal fears. I think that's where it's more challenging.
Do you still see a therapist or psychologist, or where are you today?
I don't, and that's an interesting. Why do I stop? I stopped because my medical plan paid for 10 treatments and no more in a single year, so I'd have to put another claim in, and I'm not at a point where I need it, but I should think about it, and I think it is healthy to have a constant dialogue about these things. My way of dealing with it is about doing something like this. This is really good for me. You're giving me a therapy session today, which is brilliant. And again, there are other ways of dealing with that than just necessarily going to a therapist. I was given the tools and the techniques, a bit like seeing a physiotherapist. They tell you what you can do and should do, but unless you do them, it's not going to have any impact. And I think that's something, again, I've recognized by bringing this subject up. There are things that have come out of this, and I thought, oh, I should really do one of those cross-sectionals. Although I'm not in a bad place, I'd like to analyze how I'm feeling about that particular issue and how I'm dealing with it, and if I should change my behavior or change my viewpoint and how I'm feeling to actually, it's not all bad. There's so much good about this. And I think that's something constantly to do.
Okay. So just before we wrap up, 3 takeaways for our audience who are listening in today.
Oh, wow. You're not alone. And that's the thing. If you have these feelings, please speak to someone. Because, sharing is the most important thing. If you don't tell anyone and you're hiding these things like I was, no one's going to know. No one's going to say, are you okay? If they did say, are you okay at the time, I'd say, oh, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, nothing's wrong.
It's so British.
But it's very British. But actually, to others, number 2 then is ask your friends, are you okay? Don't assume that they are. See if they need help. Do you want to go for coffee? Never try and be a bit more generous with your time in that, and just care about your friends. Reach out, touch base. If you haven't heard from someone in a long time, make sure they're okay. I guess that's my 3rd point, is just reaching out to others and make sure they're okay.
I love it. Well, Richard, thank you so much for your time. Before you go, I'm just going to flash this on the screen again. For those audience who are listening in, those who have already donated, thank you very much. Those who haven't, think about donating. But even if not, I hope the session's been very useful. It has been very useful to me, Richard. The tools that you've used just brings a lot of clarity, and has been very useful. I think the framework and what you've shared also, and I believe that a lot of people who are going through a tough time sometimes just needs, here's the recipe for making this cake that will make you feel, better. These are the lens to just ask yourself. These are the cross sectionals to do. So it's so helpful to have that in. It's the first time I've seen it. So thank you so much for sharing it.
Thank you. And I just say to everyone out there, it's just so easy to focus on the negatives. So always try and balance that. Always try and say, well, actually, but what is good? And if you're not finding good things, please get help.
You're talking about gratitude then. I'm very grateful you're my friend, Richard.
Likewise.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.